Japan has made India an offer that would have been almost unimaginable a decade ago. Tokyo is prepared to share the design of its advanced Mogami-class stealth frigate with India, allow Indian shipyards to build the warship domestically, and potentially expand the partnership into future naval co-development. But this is not a routine arms sale. Japan spent decades restricting weapons exports after World War II. Even when those restrictions began easing in the 2010s, Tokyo remained extremely cautious about transferring sensitive military technology. So why is Japan suddenly willing to hand over one of its newest frontline warship designs to India? Let's find out. Known domestically as the 30FFM, the Mogami class is the Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force's newest generation of stealth frigates. The first vessel entered service in 2022, and the platform was designed around a very modern naval philosophy: lower crew requirements, heavy automation, stealth shaping, modular mission capability, and multi-role flexibility. At roughly 3,900 tons standard displacement and capable of speeds approaching 30 knots, the Mogami is smaller than some traditional blue water destroyers. But it was engineered to deliver advanced capability without requiring enormous manpower or operating costs. That manpower reduction is one of the ship's most important features. Traditional frigates often require crews exceeding 200 personnel. The Mogami was designed to operate with around 90 sailors through extensive automation, integrated combat systems, and advanced sensor management. That matters because modern naval warfare is becoming increasingly expensive, not only in terms of hardware, but also in terms of manpower, maintenance, and logistics. A frigate requiring less than half the crew of conventional designs becomes much easier to deploy over long distances and sustain for extended operations. The ship also carries a serious weapons and sensor package. The class incorporates vertical launch systems for air defense, anti-ship missiles, advanced sonar systems for anti-submarine warfare, a 127mm naval gun, and close-in defensive systems for missile interception. But one capability makes the Mogami particularly interesting for India: mine warfare. The frigate was designed with modular systems capable of deploying unmanned underwater and surface vehicles for mine countermeasure operations. That is unusually sophisticated for an export-oriented frigate. Why does that matter? Because naval mines remain one of the cheapest and most effective ways to disrupt maritime trade routes. A mined shipping corridor near major ports or choke points can severely damage commercial traffic during a conflict. India has struggled for years to modernize its mine countermeasure fleet. The Mogami offers a way to partially address that weakness without requiring an entirely separate dedicated class of vessels. And then there is the technology Japan has already agreed to co-develop with India: the Unicorn Integrated Mast System. Unicorn combines multiple communication and sensor antennas into a single low observable structure rather than scattering them across the ship's mast. That reduces radar reflections while improving integration and survivability. In November 2024, India and Japan signed a memorandum of implementation for the co-development of the system with Bharat Electronics Limited. That agreement was important for two reasons. First, it represented one of the most advanced defense technology collaborations ever undertaken between India and Japan. Second, it established something even more important: trust. The Unicorn Agreement effectively demonstrated that Tokyo was willing to move beyond limited defense exports and into genuine technology collaboration with India. The broader Mogami proposal appears to be the next step, and that is where the story becomes much larger than a single warship. For decades after World War II, Japan imposed severe restrictions on military exports. Article 9 of the Japanese Constitution, combined with political caution surrounding militarization, created a defense culture focused almost entirely on self-defense. Japan developed extremely advanced military technologies during that period: sensors, radar systems, naval engineering, submarine technologies, but most of it stayed inside Japan. That began changing slowly in 2014. The government introduced the three principles on transfer of defense equipment and technology, replacing the older near-total export restrictions with a framework that allowed carefully controlled defense exports and international cooperation. Even then, Japan remained cautious. Tokyo explored defense partnerships and export opportunities with countries like Australia and the Philippines, but the broader strategic culture was still conservative. Then, the regional security environment changed dramatically. China accelerated naval expansion at a pace unmatched by any other country. The People's Liberation Army Navy expanded its submarine fleet, surface combatants, and long-range operational reach across the Indo-Pacific. At the same time, Japan's own security outlook hardened. In its 2022 National Security Strategy, Japan described China as an unprecedented strategic challenge. That language reflected a major shift in how Tokyo viewed the regional balance of power. The war in Ukraine also reinforced another lesson: industrial capacity matters. Modern conflicts consume enormous amounts of equipment, ammunition, and logistics support. Countries that cannot sustain defense production during crises face serious strategic vulnerabilities. Japan increasingly recognized that maintaining regional stability would require deeper cooperation with trusted partners, rather than relying solely on its alliance with the United States. That led to another major policy step in late 2023, when Tokyo loosened arms export restrictions further. The Mogami proposal to India is one of the clearest outcomes of that transformation. Japan is no longer approaching defense exports simply as commercial transactions. It is trying to build long-term strategic partnerships with countries capable of contributing to the regional maritime balance. And India sits near the center of that strategy. Japan is not offering this level of access to every country. India occupies a uniquely important position in Tokyo's strategic thinking. The first reason is geography. Japan sits in the Western Pacific. India dominates access routes across much of the Indian Ocean. Together, they occupy two critical regions surrounding China's maritime trade and naval operating environment. Both countries have also watched China expand military influence across nearby waters. Japan faces regular pressure in the East China Sea. India has increasingly tracked Chinese submarine deployments and naval activity in the Indian Ocean. Neither country expects direct conflict tomorrow, but both increasingly believe the regional balance is becoming more contested, and both want stronger maritime capabilities before that balance shifts further. That creates natural strategic alignment. The Quad framework, involving India, Japan, the United States, and Australia, reinforces that alignment further. Although the Quad is not a formal military alliance, its members increasingly cooperate on maritime awareness, naval exercises, logistics, and Indo-Pacific security coordination. A shared frigate ecosystem between India and Japan would deepen interoperability significantly. Ships built on similar designs can share maintenance knowledge, spare parts, training concepts, and operational procedures far more easily than completely separate fleets. But there is another reason Japan values India so highly: industrial scale. India possesses one of the few shipbuilding ecosystems in the Indo-Pacific, large enough to absorb advanced warship production at a meaningful scale over time. That matters enormously from Japan's perspective. If a future regional crisis disrupted Northeast Asian production infrastructure, Japan would benefit from having trusted partners capable of manufacturing compatible naval systems outside immediate conflict zones. India gives Japan something few countries can offer simultaneously: strategic geography, political alignment, industrial capacity, and long-term maritime ambition. From India's perspective, the appeal is equally clear. New Delhi has spent years pushing defense self-reliance through initiatives like Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat. India does not simply want imported weapons. It wants domestic manufacturing capability, technology absorption, and long-term industrial expertise. That is precisely why the distinction between buying warships and building them matters so much. If India receives genuine design access and local manufacturing rights, Indian shipyards gain far more than finished vessels. They gain production knowledge, engineering familiarity, systems integration experience, and future upgrade flexibility. And unlike many older defense relationships, India and Japan carry relatively little historical baggage with each other. That makes deeper cooperation politically easier on both sides. The Mogami proposal is also attractive because it fills specific gaps in India's naval structure. India already operates powerful destroyers and advanced frigates through programs like Project 17A. But the Mogami introduces a different operational philosophy. It emphasizes automation, lower operating costs, stealth optimization, modular mission capability, and integrated mine warfare functionality. Those features complement India's existing fleet rather than replacing it. The reduced manpower requirement alone is strategically valuable. Operating large fleets with conventional crew sizes becomes increasingly expensive over time. A more automated platform reduces long-term personnel burdens while allowing broader deployment flexibility. Mine warfare capability is another major factor. India's shortage of dedicated mine countermeasure vessels has been discussed for years inside defense circles. The Mogami's ability to integrate unmanned mine warfare systems into a multi-role platform offers a practical workaround. The cost profile also matters. At an estimated cost of roughly $500 million per vessel, the Mogami occupies an attractive middle ground in the global frigate market. It offers advanced capabilities without approaching the cost levels associated with much larger destroyer platforms. That balance becomes important because India faces the same challenge confronting many modern navies: how to expand fleet size fast enough to keep pace with growing maritime competition without exhausting defense budgets. And Japan's shipbuilding efficiency has attracted attention internationally. Japanese yards have demonstrated relatively rapid production timelines for the Mogami class, which is valuable for a country like India seeking faster naval modernization. There is also an important symbolic dimension. If India ultimately builds advanced Japanese-designed stealth frigates domestically, it would signal that India is no longer merely importing defense hardware. It would signal that India is becoming a co-producing naval power integrated into a broader Indo-Pacific defense network. That has implications extending well beyond a single frigate class. India is also watching how Japan's defense export ambitions are evolving elsewhere. In 2025, Australia selected Japan's upgraded new FFM frigate design to replace its aging Anzac-class fleet. That decision mattered because Japan defeated major European and South Korean competition in one of the most important naval procurement contests in the region. For decades, Japan struggled to establish credibility as a defense exporter. The Australian selection changed perceptions significantly. It demonstrated that Japanese naval platforms could compete internationally, not only politically, but technically, and India appears positioned to receive an even deeper level of cooperation. Australia's arrangement involves local industrial participation, but reports surrounding the Indian proposal suggest Tokyo may be willing to transfer broader design knowledge and manufacturing access. That reflects how strategically important India has become to Japan. At the same time, Japan is not the only country trying to strengthen defense industrial ties with New Delhi. South Korea's HD Hyundai Group has proposed major shipbuilding investments in India while promoting its own advanced frigate designs. That competition actually strengthens India's negotiating position. When multiple advanced shipbuilding powers compete for partnership access, India gains leverage to demand greater local production, deeper technology transfer, and stronger industrial participation. And that competition reveals something important about how the Indo-Pacific is changing. Major regional powers increasingly view India not only as a military partner, but also as a future defense industrial hub. The proposed Mogami partnership reflects a much broader transformation underway across Asia. For most of the post-war era, Japan relied heavily on the United States for hard security guarantees while limiting its own strategic activism. That posture is evolving. Tokyo increasingly believes regional stability requires stronger networks among Indo-Pacific partners capable of coordinating military production, maritime security, and operational capacity. The Mogami proposal is part of that greater effort. And for India, the partnership fits into a broader strategy of diversification. India has historically tried to avoid excessive dependence on any single defense supplier. It maintains relationships with Russia, France, the United States, Israel, and increasingly Japan. That diversification gives India greater strategic flexibility while accelerating access to advanced technologies. But the most important aspect of the Mogami proposal may be psychological. For decades, Japan's post-war identity was built around military restraint. Now, Tokyo is openly helping another major Asian power expand advanced naval capability through technology transfer and co-production. That would have been politically difficult to imagine even 10 years ago. The shift reflects growing concern that the regional balance of power is moving too quickly to preserve through passive deterrence alone. China's naval growth is central to that calculation. Beijing already operates the world's largest navy by hull count and continues expanding blue water capability across the Indo-Pacific. Japan and India cannot match China ship for ship individually, but by building deeper industrial and operational partnerships, they improve their ability to complicate Chinese maritime expansion across critical sea lanes. That is the deeper strategic logic behind the Mogami proposal. Japan is not simply exporting a frigate. It is helping strengthen a regional network of maritime powers capable of balancing influence across the Indo-Pacific. And India is one of the few countries large enough, industrially capable enough, and strategically positioned enough to make that effort meaningful. Despite all the momentum surrounding the proposal, important questions remain. The biggest issue is the actual depth of technology transfer. Sharing production responsibility is not the same thing as transferring complete engineering knowledge. Critical systems like combat management software, propulsion integration, sensor fusion architecture, and electronic warfare capabilities are often the most sensitive technologies in modern naval programs. How much Japan is truly willing to share remains unclear. There are also doctrinal questions. The Mogami was designed around Japan's operational requirements, which differ from India's traditional emphasis on larger blue water combatants. India's naval planners will carefully evaluate how the platform fits alongside existing indigenous programs and future destroyer development. And Indian defense institutions are understandably protective of domestic design capability. New Delhi does not want foreign collaboration to undermine long-term indigenous naval engineering expertise. That means negotiations will likely move cautiously. But even if the final agreement evolves or narrows, the broader significance already exists. Japan has crossed a strategic threshold simply by making the offer. Japan is responding to a rapidly changing Indo-Pacific security environment by building deeper strategic partnerships with countries it trusts. India sits near the top of that list because it combines geographic importance, naval ambition, industrial scale, and political alignment. The Mogami-class frigate itself is important because it represents advanced stealth design, automation, modular warfare capability, and modern naval engineering. But the larger significance is not the ship alone. It is the willingness of Japan to transfer such capability at all. A country that spent decades restricting military exports is now prepared to help India manufacture one of its newest frontline warship designs domestically. That tells you how dramatically strategic thinking in Asia has changed.